He rang me and said, "Mum, they've bashed me up." He said, "Nobody helped me, none of the bus drivers, nobody in the cars. These people were renowned for their violence."
Well, for those of you who follow the Bonafide podcast, and thank you to both of you, you might remember on a previous podcast I spoke to this amazing educator, Tracy Tully, who has been educating since 1981. And she's passionate and she's outspoken and she has enormous passion for education. And she can see that reform is needed in certain areas and really important reform. And we're going to talk about that today because this affects all of us. It affects probably a way we reflect on how we were educated, how we possibly weren't educated, and what the future for our kids is and what maybe should be. Controversially, Tracy, in our last podcast, we were talking about the violence that's going on in schools, the rage seething within a lot of students, stabbings, assaults, both verbal and physical. Tracy said she believes that all Australian schools should have metal detectors, and she explained why. So please go back to a previous podcast and have a listen to Tracy Tully. But I said during that podcast I needed to get her back for part 2 because there's a lot more to talk about with this amazing woman when she joins me again. Hello there. I've got to ask you, did you enjoy our last chat?
I most certainly did. And it was interesting because it set off like sparks a number of conversations with a huge range of different people. So I was able to ask them all these questions and hear what they're saying. I hear from a lot of teachers and educators, but to hear from other people out there, like specifically parents, other educators who aren't necessarily teachers, disability adults, young disability adults who are in training programs, etc. It was wonderful. It really was wonderful to have all those conversations, Luke.
Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about today, and they're really important. I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of expensive private schools versus state schools, taxpayer-funded schools. I wanted to talk about maybe parts of the curriculum that we're not teaching and parts of the curriculum that we're teaching that are unnecessary. I can't remember the last time I used algebra or a logarithm, and yet we had to learn it. It's something that really sticks out with me, Tracy, and we'll do this one first, the curriculum. Life skills. Yes, we need to be educated. It's great to read, write, and do arithmetic. The 3 R's are important. But there are other subjects that I think we all needed to learn and we need to learn in order to embrace life more comfortably. Now, I've got a list of things here, but I'll go for number 1 because I'd like to know what you think. When I was at school, doing commerce was an elective. But I think financial literacy and learning how to deal with money and how to deal with debt and the best ways to avoid debt is so important because getting credit is really dangerously easy. And credit cards, this mindset, it's free money. And next thing you know, you're in trouble and filing for bankruptcy, which can affect you forever. And not really understanding income to debt ratios and, in this day and age, living beyond your means. Now, I know it's a lengthy introduction, but I just wanted to tell you where I'm going with this. You and I grew up with parents who lived within their means. The only debt my parents were ever in was to borrow money for the block of land that they built on. They lived and died by lay-by. That I remember when the bank card came out, and I think it was Gough Whitlam. This little green card came in the mail. It gave every Australian, without a credit check, $2,000 worth of credit. And people thought, this is amazing. This is amazing. And my parents had secondhand, their house was full of secondhand stuff, and they bought a dishwasher or they bought a lounge, or when colour TV came out, they bought a colour TV when they had the money. Or they went through lay-by, where they purchased it, but you didn't take it home. You had to pay a little bit off every week or every month until you owned it. Now, I look at my kids and my son, who is renting, earns good coin, but hasn't got anything in savings, lives hand to mouth. and a little bit beyond sometimes, but has widescreen TVs, 3 of them, loves overseas trips, loves smashed avo on toast for brunch. My daughter, who doesn't drink now, but they love going out with the girls and having $18 cosmopolitans like they do on Sex and the City. Should financial literacy not be an elective, but should it be a part of the curriculum for every child? Can we start with that?
Absolutely. And it's very, very simple answer, that one. Absolutely compulsory, I believe, in lower primary upwards. Now, if we were to listen to the Barefoot Investor, for example, he explains how to teach children to use their money boxes to save and to have something to spend, etc. Absolutely brilliant, simple, absolutely phenomenal structure there. Very simple to teach children how to save from that young age. So that financial literacy, I believe, should be absolutely compulsory and right down as low as you can go. I mean, we have in prep, we have kids with fake money in the tills, etc., in the little shops with all the plastic fruit. That's where it starts, and that's where we're not taking it to the next level. Once they leave kindergarten and prep and go into the classrooms, there's not that emphasis. It's all photocopied pages, etc., and reams and reams and reams of chalk and talk. So, yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. Financial literacy and English literacy are the most important subjects a child can learn when they start their education, and they should be moving up in increments according to their age and their experiences, etc., as they go right up to the bitter end, right up to the last year of school.
I know you were a high school principal on many occasions at many schools, and you're talking about senior students. You may hate me for saying this, but I think the most important tier and foundation of education is primary school. Because if you enjoy primary school and you enjoy learning and learn to absorb information at that age, it sets that foundation for the rest of your schooling. But that's only my opinion.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm actually primary trained, and then I moved up into high school later. So I'm with you. The foundational learning must happen, and it's not, because the emphasis of the people in education are all high school inclined or trained. So it's always their view, and that if you deliver a child to high school and they can't read and write, it's your problem, they're failing high school.
Yeah.
So I agree that within the primary school, the biggest issue is that we must teach kids comprehension, and we must teach kids those practical skills. So if they're counting, count fruit. If they're having a conversation, then they're having a communication back and forward. We're not teaching them communication. That would be my biggest bugbear. Mm-hmm. We are not teaching our kids how to communicate effectively, and the curriculum has a lot to answer for that. So to answer your question, yes, kids should be including, and I always did in all my schools, food. Even on School of the Air, would you believe it? We made Christmas puddings. Wow. On our two-way radio classes. We made Christmas puddings, and the parents said it was hilarious at the other end because there's flour and food everywhere, but the kids had fun. So nothing can exclude you from doing it. It's just changing that mindset of how you deliver education, and we have to do that, as you said, to make it real life. And if we don't, our kids suffer, because most parents are working now and they don't have the time to teach the kids, so they do need to learn those skills at school.
And when I was growing up, we lived next door to a German family. My grandfather was horrified because he fought at Villers-Bretano in World War I. Growing up in a bilingual family and being bilingual is absolutely fantastic. But do you think English should be our first language?
Ah, yes, we're in Australia, so obviously English does need to be our first language. We do need to teach kids, I believe, and I know my children did and excelled at it. It was interesting watching it. Teach them other languages when they're very, very young.
Oh, yeah.
They pick it up no matter what countries my kids go to. They pick it up. They just pick up the different and they can actually shop and everything. And that really makes me proud, but it makes me happy for them, because I go to Italy and I have to sit there and watch lip read and all sorts of things to try and work it out. But it's always everything. It's like music. You teach a child music when they're young, they excel at maths. Yeah. As you said, there's a lot of math in music, and they've got a good ear, and they learn to appreciate the rhythm and the tone. They can use that for their voice. They can use that for their breathing. Absolute gold.
Yeah. And reading, is it a lost art? And there's a reason for this, and you might enjoy this. I haven't given you a heads up on this one yet, because I wanted to see your reaction on your face. We had to read. There was no talking books back in the day. If you had to do an assignment on a book, you read it. There weren't many movies about the book that you could cheat with. But reading, I so enjoyed reading, and reading can open up so much of your life. I wanted to ask you this. When you and I went to school, because we're about the same era, we had to write. And you remember it had to be cursive writing. We had those black lines that you could see under the page to get the angle right. But we had to write, and you were tested on your handwriting. Mine's terrible, but only a chemist can understand my writing. But we had to write. And I had a caller on the air a few years ago who said, why do we need to learn to write at school anymore? Everything's on a keyboard. You do everything on a keyboard. You do everything on a keyboard. The only time you need to pick up a pen is to sign your name. Why do they teach handwriting in school anymore? It should go out the window. Your thoughts?
I disagree. Every child should learn handwriting for a couple of reasons. Because when you handwrite, you are comprehending and thinking forward to what you're doing. So when you type on a keyboard, you're not. You're just typing away. Yes, you can have that little bit of thought, but when you write, it gives you pause. And this is what we need to teach kids, the ability to pause at every different situation in their life, especially when they're angry, they're concerned, they're anxious, they're not sure. Pausing gives them time to breathe and reassess. So yes, that's where writing is really good. And it gives them the opportunity to use their brain and to watch what's happening moving forward, just like reading. Reading and writing go together for a reason. So when you teach a child to read, you're always teaching them to move, 3 or 4 words ahead, so that you're working out the context of what you're saying, and then you can work out what words could be.
It's funny you should say pause, because I was watching a TED talk from a prominent child psychologist a little while ago who was talking about road rage and short temper. And we were talking in the last podcast about rage at school.
Yes.
And he was saying, in his opinion, today's generation and kids today are not allowed to get bored. And he was saying boredom is good for you. Mm. If you are gratified instantly by something on a tablet, on a screen, even in everything in life, you need the answer to a question, you can just ask Google. In fact, you don't even have to type anymore. You can speak into it. And everything is instant. When a child is bored, then their imagination can take over and they learn to expand. We've done a massive disservice to younger Australians by not allowing them to get bored.
Exactly. And
do you agree with that philosophy?
Oh, most definitely, 100%. And the reason being is because when you're bored, you have the ability to take initiative and responsibility for your time in that space. You can either sit there and do nothing and be lazy, or just chill out and relax, or you can look around and think, what can I do to better myself? What can I do to make my next meal more exciting? I'll go and do some research. The pause or that boredom state is highly, highly contagious and very good for mental health.
Yeah, learning to pause and learning to deal with boredom and not have everything instantly there. Yeah. Whether I look, probably guilty of it. My kids had a TV in front of them. They watched The Wiggles. They had before DVDs, videos of Toy Story and all their favourite Disney things. Oh God, the kids are driving me mad. Well, let's let the telly babysit them for a while. So I'm guilty. That didn't happen when I was growing up. It was get outside and play, and go build a fort. Go and play cricket, go fishing. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's not the kid's fault. Maybe parents are getting lazy. Maybe we're just too busy. Maybe we've got parents who are flat out paying rent or a mortgage and they've got 3 jobs. Kids are coming home to empty houses with their own key. And the first thing you'll do is go onto your laptop, go on the internet or turn the telly on.
Yes, and it's a safety measure as well as it's done for you. You know, it's like shopping at Costco. Everything's done for you wherever you go. It's like going to fast food. It's done for you. So it's the done for you mentality, which is dangerous. Parents haven't got the time, and so they rely heavily on tech.
The latest craze on dating apps is, and you want to know what they call it?
Yes.
They in order to impress your date, they reckon you've got to prove that you read, but read quality literature. And so even if you haven't read it, they reckon take a book on your first date and put it on the table at the coffee lounge or the hotel or wherever, because it makes you look sophisticated and well-read. And you know what they call it? You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
They say you've got to book up to hook up.
Oh, I love it.
I just learned that today.
That's excellent. That's classic. Imagine if you were able to sell that to all the high school kids, you know, book up to hook up. That'd be a really powerful, trendy slogan. I love it.
No, but the downfall is you don't have to have read it.
Oh.
You can read an abbreviated version or watch the movie, but it's important to have the book on the coffee table on your first date. No, it's there. It's there for the wrong reason.
Yes.
You know, if you had an audio book on a CD, not the same thing. No, it's got to be the hardcover book. You've got to book up to hook up. Oh God.
Oh, that's amazing. I love books, absolutely love them. I cherish all my books. I'm an author, and so I'm currently writing a children's book right now in the Dr. Seuss tempo.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm also taking it one step further and writing it for dyslexic kids, because they struggle. There's not a lot of material around for them to learn to read. And there's a lot of dyslexic kids out there that we don't know. A lot of adults our age that we just don't know the struggle that they would have had going through school, and employment would have been phenomenal. I love books. I love the feel of them, the smell of them, and you can't beat a book. We need to make sure that we teach reading really well and get kids to read. I never forget my daughter struggled a bit with reading, but my son used to we all sit in bed every night and read a book, and we'd have the wizard, the young wizard, what's his name? Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah.
And that it was interesting watching the book go around between the two kids while they tried to work out how to pronounce the word, what it meant, how it fit in the sentence. And it was priceless, absolutely priceless. Thanks to Harry Potter, my daughter learned to read, and she flew from there, absolutely flew from there. And she wasn't doing that well at school reading, but she did with Harry Potter. So book up to hook up. That's funny.
Isn't it? I thought you'd enjoy. I just learned that today, so I'm behind it too. But yeah, you got to book up to hook up, folks. And and we're lucky because my dad loved reading, and he read to me at night. And I like you grew up with Dr. Seuss, but Enid Blyton and Kenneth Graham, The Wind in the Willows, and A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh. But he loved Banjo Patterson. And I remember it was primary school. And from memory, it's Act 1, Scene 3 from Hamlet, where Polonius is talking to his son Laertes, who's about to go off into the world. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for a loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, for thou canst not then be false to any man. How do I remember that?
Rote learning.
Dad obviously made reading fun, but explained it well. I was lucky, wasn't I?
Very, very lucky. I know we travelled around a lot, so did our education just about every state in Australia, and for a while there, a couple of schools we went to in a row in each state did Macbeth, and so my sister and I would sit there.
Bubble, toil and trouble.
Absolutely. When shall we three meet again?
Oh, I see you. Yes, I can see you. Oh, you were straight from Central Casting when you did that.
Oh, I loved it, and we still do it, and our kids can actually say it. It's like Monty Python. They're the same thing. Our kids, because they heard us talking, they would rattle off reams of Monty Python.
What's your favourite Python scene?
Oh, out damn oh, no, that's
No, that's Macbeth.
Sorry.
You've gone back to Macbeth. You've gone back to Dunsinane.
Yes, come back, fight me, the Lagnus guy with the sword. Come back.
Yeah.
Fight.
We have a massive tradies shortage in Australia. You cannot find a plumber, a sparky, a chippy, a builder, and those that are in business are struggling to find apprentices. And it's adding to our housing problem because it's very hard to find people that can actually build houses anymore. Are we encouraging our kids too much, do you reckon, to go to university? And do you think there are some kids that who aren't academic in that way? It doesn't mean they're dumb. They're some of the smartest people I know that can work with their hands. But do you think maybe today parents are guilty of really wanting their kids to get a university degree when they should be looking at something else? What are your thoughts?
Yes, they are, and not for any fault of their own, because they've been conditioned, just like we were, over decades and decades and decades, because in the education, the Australian education structure, a university degree is the gold standard education pass. That was pushed and still is pushed. And any school will, when they talk about VOC-Ed or VET, I love VOC-Ed. I just love it. And I love teaching it. Vocational education and training.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. We have this second-rate value or perception that skills and training isn't as good as academic training and learning. And this is our problem, a huge problem. When you look at around every state, how they work out the seniors' results and everything, you have, your normal subjects, the academic subjects, and then you'll have the applied subjects like hospitality, agriculture, and then you'll have your VOC-Ed or vocational education certificates 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, for me, I believe once again that we are not teaching our kids in primary school to use their hands to make things and use their math and science and English and literacy, all of that in one. So simple. But it's not done. Once again, we churn lessons out with photocopied sheets or books, and they sit there. They should be using their hands. They should be learning to use their hands when they're younger to problem solve. And showing initiative are really big for me as an educator. So that's once again what we should be doing. You see the schools with an ag plot with the chooks or, a cart the kids go down and feed. They are humming, those schools at lunchtime. They really do hum because the kids have got something real and physical to look at and do. Same with learning to build something. In my shack I'm living in now, I've got stuff that my kids have built over the years and I still use them. In fact, my laptop is sitting on a stool, my son made me, in grade 7. So that's a big thing. So yes, the emphasis has been on universities for a reason. Let's face it, universities are powerful and they're extremely wealthy. So that when they talk, those chancellors, they hold big positions. When they talk, everyone listens, especially politically. When I wanted to bid, in these schools, I did remote education. So for me to bid for a child to get into pharmacy from my little school, 12 hours west of Brisbane, was difficult. So what I would do is I would bypass everyone and what everyone used to do, and I'd ring up the chancellor and say, when are you having a principal's lunch? And they go, why is that, Tracy? I said, I think you should have a principal's lunch in Toowoomba. I'll come and I'd like to bid you my best top kids for your subjects. I'd like to do a deal, negotiate a deal with you. Oh, and when I arrive at those lunches every year or every semester, the chair next to the chancellor had my name on it and I would start negotiating the minute I sat down. So what subjects can you offer me? What subjects can you offer me in grade 11? So when my kids finish in grade 12, you guarantee, and they've passed, you guarantee them immediate entrance. Oh, this is going back a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that, Tracy. That's a good, let's do it. And I'd skip away and I'd go back to school and say, kids, blah, 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 blah. I know you want to do this. Come over here. You want to do journalism? I had all these kids doing journalism. You want to do pharmacy? Come on. We're going to make it happen. So I get goosebumps from that. And that's the way we should be looking at education, looking at the kids' needs. Kids who love using their hands, we can identify them in primary school. We can identify them in year 8. We don't have to wait to a year 11. That's a load of rubbish. And I'd use really strong words, but it's a load of rubbish. I used to always tell my kids in grade 9, we will sit down and we'll look at your career path. Term 1, grade 9. We're not going to wait to the end of term 4 in grade 10. That's ridiculous. Absolutely. So when you're looking at offering kids the education that actually speaks to their needs, you'll have less behaviour problems.
And talking about behaviour problems, you mentioned dyslexia a second ago, and I took a note because I wanted to come back to it.
Yeah.
If you have a student that has a learning difficulty, but they're not dumb, but they think they are, and maybe they've been told by too many people that they're dumb, and if they can't read and comprehend, and they're feeling dumb, they're bored, and they'll play up.
Correct.
And that snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. But if you can diagnose that difficulty, own it, treat it, and I mean that, treat it, you change their lives forever, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Once again, totally agree with you. And I'm anti, all capital letters, inclusion that happens in Queensland. So inclusion is where you've got everyone in the mix in every classroom. You've got all the behaviour management kids that should not be in that environment. You've got disability kids that cannot handle the overload of the noise and the overwhelm and the anxiety. And no, the department says, you will do this, you'll do inclusion because it's our thing. It's a political. It just ticks boxes. But what it does is it sacrifices learning for the majority of kids because we're not actually looking at the needs of these kids who are struggling, because they've all been labelled in the past. This is the problem. And so if we look at the trades stream pathway, we can do an academic and trades, actually. So if we look at different pathways for kids, we'd find that those kids would naturally progress into other areas. Like, some of those disability kids, they love tech, absolutely love tech. But they'll have specific needs with the earphones and noise cancelling earphones and all sorts of things. They need to be in smaller environments, smaller classrooms. Same with the behaviour kids. So what we're doing is we're piling on to teachers, absolutely piling on this ridiculous decree that you must educate everybody. You'll hold a wand and you'll do it all. And that's why private schools win, actually. You'll do it all because we said so, but you cannot physically do it. You just can't.
It's funny because I'll give you an analogy and I'd be interested to hear your response to this. If we have classrooms full of kids with special needs and we don't expect them all to learn like the robots that the teachers over many years have been taught to teach to. I put it to a very famous sports commentator, and I won't mention his name, but I'll tell you when we stop recording because it's interesting to know who this came from. I said, why is Australia always so good in the world rankings at swimming? So there must have been, the Olympic Games must have been coming up and the tryouts were coming up. And one of our top swimmers didn't make the time at the Australian Championships to make the Olympic team, and yet this person was very famous and should have been representing Australia at the next Olympics, but missed out because on the day of selection at the Australian National Championships didn't perform. He said, that's why we're so good. That person had the flu that day and was not on track, and they missed out. No second chance because of their reputation. And he said, because we take no prisoners when it comes to swimming and for national selection, no matter how they feel on the day, they all know they've got to perform. Where they don't pander to their individual problems and I had the flu, my leg was sore. You don't cut the qualifying time at the national championships, you miss out on Olympic selection. No exceptions. Interesting philosophy.
Absolutely, and I love it. I really do. I used to say to my kids all the time, at assemblies, I'm interested in your PB. your personal best. Everyone knows what their PB is, and I would be talking about it all the time. I'm interested in your PB. How are you challenging your own personal best at anything you do? And they get that psychology where they learn the discipline then, and they learn to only compete against themselves first to make sure they're doing A, B, and C before they can get into the teamwork and they can excel in the sports in particular. The PB, personal best, and that's all over sporting.
Okay, how do you feel about this new philosophy where everyone who participates gets a ribbon?
Oh no!
What do you had great attendance, or you had a great effort. Everybody gets a reward. I had a lady send it in to me. It was an invitation to a birthday party, and unless every child in that class was invited, the teacher said no one goes or everyone goes because they'll feel excluded, the ones who aren't invited.
Yeah.
And there was going to be no musical chairs because there was going to be a loser. Oh. And the parcel, the instructions were there had to be a prize under every layer of wrapping, not just the one prize at the middle. Everyone who unwrapped a layer got a prize, so they didn't feel excluded. How do you feel about this philosophy?
I don't believe in it. We must learn to lose. We must learn to lose. Losing is across every aspect in our life. And why whoever's idea it was to treat children like that, and especially in schools, and to teach them to I suppose, pander to them and their tantrums, etc., or the parents' guilt because you lose a running race, you lose a running race. There's only one person that comes through first. That's it. There's only one. I mean, you might have nose to nose in a horse race, but still they have the camera to tell you who's a whisker over. So we have to teach our kids to lose. It's very important.
It's funny. I guess it depends on the person because Kelsey is sick of me telling this story, but it's 100% true. When I was in first or second form, God, I got to stop saying that because you know what I mean. We're playing basketball against Balgala Boys High. We got beaten 104 to 4. And the only two baskets we scored, I scored because I was cherry picking and I was being lazy on defence. But we got beat 104 to 4. Everyone had their heads down. Some people may have said, I'm giving this away. But this is just me. I said, that's never going to happen to me again. I'm going to train harder.
Exactly.
But that's just me. Here's another one. People often ask, why is there such a huge gap between the top level of international soccer when the United States has millions of participants and yet on the world stage they don't perform and the European countries do? And it was explained that whilst there's a huge attendance to play soccer in America, the kids all have fun. And everyone gets a fair go. And if the coach doesn't put someone on, they're pressured by the parents. You didn't give my son or my daughter a fair go. And so that level of fun and fairness is the basis for the game. In European countries, you're either shit hot or you don't play, and the money will come. But it's only for the elite. And if you want to be a national hero, and if you want to play at this elite European standard, only the very creamiest of the cream get that. In America, it's a fair go for everyone. Whilst it's a good thing, it gets kids moving and running, and it's increased the sale of SUVs for mums. but on a junior and collegiate level, massive participation. But at this level, underperforming considering the huge base of juniors that they have playing. That was how it was explained to me. Agree or disagree, it's worth discussing.
A great discussion point, because there's personal development and then there's sport. And then you take sport to the next level, and that's competitive sport. So you've got 3 different levels, all exist in schools, not personal development much. So the Russians teach their young girls, to be acrobatic.
Gymnasts.
And they teach them that so that they teach them not to fear and to teach them to have more courage, the girls. They do that nice and early. And for gymnastic, that's once again your PB. Everyone has a go. Everyone has go. I don't know about you when you're at school, but primary school, we had to jump over that wooden horse. In primary school, we had to. No matter how hard it was for us, we had to climb on top of that horse and we had to prove to ourselves that we could and get over to the other side. So you've got personal development where we're teaching. We should be teaching our kids to move in every possible way, to get their circulation going, get their lungs going, get their mind going, to problem solve, to show initiative. And then we move to the next level, team sports or solo sports. So you could be doing javelin or you could be doing soccer. And it's at that place where people will say, okay, I know all our kids had indoor soccer after school. All the high school. It was great. All the teachers would come down and they would do that for hours and hours, up to 6, 7 o'clock from 3. And they would teach the kids to do indoor soccer. And it didn't matter who you were, how good you were athletically, everyone had a go. I liked that part of that particular sport. But then they went from there to be hand selected to go to the real competition.
Yeah, the elite level. And the elite level is fine for those who want to do that. But if you want to participate, get healthy, get off your ass and away from a screen, participation is great. But on a world stage, if you want to be elite, and you mentioned gymnastics, and I cannot hear gymnastics without thinking immediately of the 1976 Olympics and Nadia Comaneci at 14 getting that perfect 10. And she was from Romania. The torture that poor girl went through in order to reach that level. And the Americans who then said, well, hang on. And so they got Western Bloc country coaches to coach at American colleges. Now, most of them stopped having fun.
Yes.
But the quality improved. It's an interesting debate to have. I want to move on.
Discipline.
Discipline. Depends on what level you want to get to.
Yeah, that's correct.
I wanted to talk to you about the pros and cons of an expensive private school versus a state tax-funded school. And just let me tell you something. There is research that shows that students at exclusive private schools actually achieve higher raw scores on average. But it's primarily because they typically come from wealthier socioeconomic backgrounds. When accounting for family income, parental education, tutoring, studies reveal little to no difference in actual academic growth compared to the other schools. But if you've got a school, and let me just read this out for you.
Yes.
Let's look at some of the annual fees at Australia's most prestigious boarding schools. $100,000. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the national median full-time wage is $98,000. A BMW X3 is $100,000. 10% deposit on a $1 million home is $100,000. Cranbrook School, which is in the leafy eastern suburbs, is in Bellevue. Year 12 tuition, $52,000, $470,000. Boarding, you can add an extra $46,000, $99,078. And there's a whole list of them. $90,000. Geelong Grammar, $93,840. King's School at Parramatta, $88,350. It's a lot of money. Do you think academically that a prestigious, expensive school provides a better education than a state government-funded school?
Okay, so first of all, I'll answer this part of the question. Do I think a private school provides a better education than a public school? A majority of private schools have more peaceful classrooms, which means teachers can teach and students can learn, and there's less fear going on in the classroom. Parents are absolutely guaranteed that when their child goes to school, this is what they're paying for. So as you said, there's all different levels of prices for private schools. I've been to every single type of school you could possibly think of in my lifetime. The most remote schools where we learnt in jungles, etc., learned our geography, and to most prestigious South Australian school in Adelaide, St. Peter's Girls' School. So I've gone to them all, and I've also gone to a boarding school, and I've done both public and private. My kids were forced to go. It certainly wasn't in my plan. They were forced to go to boarding school very, very young because of the physical assault they suffered due to my job. And so my son went in grade 5 after being very badly bashed.
Oh, really?
Yes. It was a shocking story.
Was that he's being bullied?
Yeah, physically assaulted, by a gang, 2 carloads that parents organised. So both those parents got charged and convicted for it. But the Department of Education, and I'll never forgive them for this, the Queensland Department of Education, so it was the regional director of the day, refused to allow me to transfer out so that I could protect my kids and not send them to boarding school, to be able to even teach, or I was happy to demote, to be closer to them. He was grade 5 when he went, and it cost me an arm and a leg. So I fully understand the costs involved with private education and boarding schools. So, I was living hand to mouth for years and years and years and years and years, absolutely years, because I had 2 going through, but for the safety of the kids. So I was able to study all these systems and have really good conversations with the teachers and the principals too. So yes, I'm going to say an outstanding yes. Private schools in general deliver a better quality of education per population because they have the systems and the money to fund those systems to make sure that they have consistent education and all the structures in place. That is the difference.
There is a perception, I think there's a perception from parents that the teachers individually are more accountable in private schools, and that if their students aren't performing, they're made accountable, whereas in a state system, it's very hard to dismiss a teacher unless they've broken the law. Is that true or not? Absolutely true. I've spoken to heaps and heaps and heaps of private school teachers, especially during their enterprise bargaining agreement phases in their private schools. And I have a lot of private teachers ring me for advice about what can I do about this, or in a leadership role, how should I handle this situation? They are asked to do over and above hours compared to a public school teacher. So most schools, most independent schools have a religious denomination of some sort. So they're expected to do that as well. And so a lot of them work on weekends, unpaid. And once again, they're not necessarily on as good a wage as people think. So the tall poppy syndrome has a lot to do with that. The biggest issue here for me is people, because of the tall poppy syndrome in Australia, people forget, and they keep forgetting, that every person has the right to a choice. The choice a parent wants to make for their children for whatever reason they have. I'll give you an example of what they did to me when I sent my kids to boarding school. Number one, they refused, the department, and I'll never forgive them, refused to allow me to have a transfer. Like, my points were hundreds and hundreds of points. I had all the points I needed plus 50 times that to get out. But no, they wouldn't. So I was forced to send my kids to boarding school. One of my kids happened to slap on a sticker on the bumper bar of my car with the name of their school. I was dragged into an investigation because how dare I, a principal, public principal, have a private school sticker on my car? And I told them where to go. I said, it's got nothing to do with you. My car, you don't pay for it. You don't pay for anything when I use my car. In fact, I use my car and pay for all the fuel for the department. And I said, it's got none of your business. And let's not have that conversation because it will go further. And so you've got this attitude of that tall poppy syndrome. Let me circle back. You mentioned your son was bullied and beaten quite badly. How old was he, and how did this happen? Were they school students that did this? What happened? Because I wanted to talk to you about bullying and anti-bullying strategies that you put in place. What happened to your son? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, it was frightening, still is frightening.
What happened?
Recounting it. He was 10. He just got out of hospital, and he just got out of hospital because he had meningitis, so he's quite ill. And things were tough, in those first couple of months out of hospital. He used to go home. At that period, he used to come on a bus from school and come up to me and sit in the library and work until I finished school. But because he wasn't feeling very well, he asked if he could go home and just lie down. And we were in communication on the phone, etc. And I let him because he was a good boy. Like, he was a good kid. Yep, latchkey kid. But it was about him having a lie down because of his
illness.
Illness, and he didn't want to do that in the high school because there's too much noise, etc. And of course, meningitis affects your eyes and your ears and all sorts of things. So yes, so that's what was happening. He was catching the school bus, and this particular day, that morning, I had a huge lockdown in my school, massive lockdown. And to cut it short, I had 30 drunks come up the street and jump the fence, and they were after some teachers and the school nurse.
Well, how old were these drunks?
Oh, they're all post-school.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the leader of this particular drunken rage that day was a boy, a 16-year-old boy. I kicked out of the school that morning for punching in the head and throat students at school. It was I walked him off the school grounds. He was under the influence of ice, and I knew it. It's not hard to tell. And he ripped his shirt off and he started sparring with me and everything. I escorted him out. And then he said to me, "I will get you. I'll bash your kids. I'll bash your husband. I'll shoot your dogs, and I'll burn your house down." The four things he said to me. I said, "Out." Walked into the gate.
16.
But under the influence of illegal substances. The next thing, I get a phone call from Mum. Absolutely off her face. Mum had a foster baby in her arms. Yes. And she rang me up and she said, "I'm coming up to see you, you effing so-and-so." I said, "That's fine, okay, but let's make sure that we have a meeting that's blah, blah, blah." And she came barging into the school. And she had this baby in her hands, and she said, "Where's your effing school nurse? I'll bash that." Da-da-da-da-da. And she has been saying these things on the phone, and so I locked the office up. I put the whole office on lockdown, and I said to everyone in the office, "No faces. I will look after this situation. Nobody. I don't want this woman to see one single person in this office." So I met her at the door and escorted her in. She's carrying on and screaming at me, sat down. I told her the rules and regs, etc., and what was going to happen to her son. And she got up and she said to me, "I'm going to bash you, bash your kids, bash your husband, kill the dogs and burn the house down." And off she went. I went, "Whoa, gee whiz." So I rang the department. I said, "Look, this is what's happened. I've got to do a report, etc., blah, blah, blah." And they just said, yeah, "Tracy, that's okay." And then all of a sudden the father rang. He rang me on the phone. He did the same threats.
I'm surprised you knew who the father was. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Keep going.
No, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. And then all of a sudden I hung up, and with about 15 minutes, one of my phys ed teachers down the other side of school, huge school grounds, she rang me and she said, "Tracy, you've got to get down here straight away. You don't want to, you've got to see what's happening, and we have to do a lockdown." I said, "We have to do a lockdown?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Hit the button now." And I ran out onto the oval, and I looked at this mob coming up. I rang the police. They said, "We can't get there. We're dealing with half that mob because there was a funeral last night and they're all drunk this morning." I said, No, mate, I don't think you understand. This is a school. Someone has to get here." He said, "We'll try and get here as fast as we can." So fortunately, as I said to you in my last interview, my kids in that school knew what a real lockdown was, and that school was solid. Not a single noise. And the distance those guys moved at from when I first went out in the Oval to when I double, triple checked everything and was starting back to the office because I told them to lock down behind me and let me in, and that they were behind me it was just a surge. They're behind me. And I thought, "Oh, I'm gone. I'm absolutely gone." And then the boy was leading the group. So he was coming in behind me, standing behind me. The others were a little bit distance behind him. And I just...
Did they have weapons?
No, not that I could see, no.
Okay.
But and not that I could see, but they probably did. But anyway, he wanted me to turn around and face him so he could hit me. And of course, I wasn't going to turn around and face him. I just kept walking. I didn't say anything. And I kept walking. I got to the office. I went in and I rang the police and I said, I'm desperate, absolutely desperate here. And they were going around through the school, come out, threatening everyone and whatnot. And then all of a sudden the police came and they broke up. I managed that. I went back to the office to report that. And just as I sat down in the office, my phone rang and my 10-year-old son was on the other side of the phone. And he rang me and said, Mum, they've bashed me up. And I said, what happened? And he said, I was standing outside waiting for the school bus and 2 carloads of your kids from your school came and their mums and they bashed me up. They bashed me up really badly, Mum. And I said, how did that happen? How did that happen? You're waiting for the school bus. What did the other people do? And he said, nobody helped me. None of the bus drivers, nobody in the cars. These people were renowned for their violence. So they got him up against the fence. And so, of course, they smashed up front. He turned around and they did his back. Anyway, I rang the police straight away. And I said, this is what's happened. And I rang my boss and said, I've got to go. He said, just go, Tracy, go now. Look after him. And then I raced around home and I saw his little face and he's 10 years old. And, you could barely see his face. It was cut and swollen and his bottom, his chest, everything was just black and blue. Even his buttocks, they had a good fun, these big high school boys with him. And then the police, my boss rang me, he said, Tracy, I know this is really hard. I want you to take him straight to the police station first before the hospital. And I'm going, no. He said, just do it. I said, okay. Anyway, I drove up to the police station and all the police were standing out the front. Come on, quick, inside. Come on, Sam, come with us. And I didn't know what was going on. And they sat us down and those guys took over and they were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. They weren't just your average police. They were trained in riot police. These guys were from Brisbane. They are phenomenal. Australian kickboxing champion in the middle of it.
Where was this? Where is this school?
In Charleville High School. He was at the Catholic school, a primary school. So what the police did was they said to him, they got all the names that they needed from him, and then they said to him, we want you to listen how we deal with these people, Sam. It's really important. And I'm going, tearing my hair out. No, he's got to go to hospital. But no, it's very important, Tracy. He hears this. So anyway, they rang him up. They rang up the parents and they said, where are you? And they said, halfway, to this local town, 100k away. And they said, okay, you make sure you go to your place. And have you still got the baby? Yes. All right then. So don't move when you get to that place, will you? And the way they did it was so well done, because we're coming right now and there'll be a woman police officer and there'll be a couple of cars of male officers. Don't you dare move. You just stay there and wait for us. Off these police went. Sam went up to hospital and then they drove out there, took the baby and charged them. And they said to me, rang me and said, don't worry, you're not coming. You don't come to court, Tracy. They're charged and convicted. We've got everything on them. Found all the drugs, you name it. They've admitted to everything and they were both charged and convicted. And they actually led them out of town that day.
What jail time did they do?
I don't know whether they're just fines or not. I don't know, actually, to tell you the truth. It was probably the last thing on my mind.
And that charming woman, the mother, who's got a foster child in her arms when she's gone to the school.
Yes.
She's getting a benefit from being a foster carer. Unfit. God, unfit.
Yes.
Was she charged?
But they were all charged. The father was charged under the new laws then, where you're using a telephone device when you're using, I can't remember the law at the moment, but there's a saying for that. But anyway, so they did, and they left
a carriage service.
Yeah, carriage service, that's correct. And so then Sam said to me when he recovered, he said, Mum, I'm not going back to school. I said, no, that's fair enough, Sam. I said, I'll take some time off and, we'll just do out the term. I went on leave and we'll do out the term. And then we talked a lot and he said, I want to go to boarding school, Mum. I said, but Sam, you're 10. He said, no, I'm not staying here and that's that. And I said, right on. So I rang up one of the schools in Toowoomba and I explained the situation. They said, bring him down. He can
Was it a Catholic boarding school?
No, it was just an independent school.
Oh, okay, because when I went to Chevalier, the CHS, Catholic High School, the CHS was one of our sister schools. We flew to Brisbane and caught a bus to Toowoomba to play sport for a week. Anyway, sorry. Only time I've been to Toowoomba. Anyway, sorry. I thought it might have been the same school.
No. So he went to prep. It was called Toowoomba Prep. And he went there and honestly, it was just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Everything was wonderful. Those teachers, honestly, just wonderful. It was fantastic what they did to help him. To get over what was such a traumatic experience. And, of course, the trauma for me was that the department wouldn't release me to go and live there and have the kids at home and just be day schoolers. But that's it in a nutshell. I wrote a book, Fearless, Buckle Up, Build Resilience. It's the first chapter in that book. I'll send a copy to you.
Please. Fearless by Tracy Tully. And don't get the audio book. Get it, put it on the table at your first date. But bloody well read it. So I went to boarding school for disciplinary reasons, not like poor Sam. It was one of the best things that ever happened, and I didn't enjoy it much being a Catholic school. Number one, I wasn't Catholic. Two, I didn't play cricket. I didn't participate in cadets, and I didn't play rugby union. However, can I just tell you, the bullying that went on in my first year, which was third form, year 9, was not just systemic. It was encouraged because it built character. And so many of the boarders there, their big brothers and their fathers and their grandfathers have been there. They were old school, old boys.
Yeah.
They were treated like protected species, really. And the bullying that went on was actually encouraged because it built character. It was an all-boys school. The second year, which was 1977, fourth form, year 10, it went Coed. Now, this is just my observation.
Yeah.
The whole place softened.
Yeah.
It softened. The boys' attitudes changed. It was a completely different feel in that second year because it went co-ed. How do you feel about co-education versus single-sex education?
I believe in it. I think it's good. I know my son, by the time he ended up for high school in a Catholic school in Brisbane, boarding school, he would keep saying, "Mum, can you send me to a co-ed school?" And I heard what he was saying, same thing, less bullying, et cetera, et cetera. He had a great time at that school and had awesome opportunities, et cetera. But bullying's everywhere, in every school. Co-ed does have that wonderful balance, I believe.
It does. Well, the world's co-ed, but there is a theory that girls perform academically better at a single-sex school because they haven't got pesky boys with pimples and hormones racing, distracting them, because girls mature faster than boys during those teenage years. So the theory is that the girls do better at single-sex schools without the distraction. But it is an interesting thing to talk about, and I'll invite our listeners to give us their thoughts on that. How did you put in place anti-bullying strategies?
The biggest thing for me is you have a boundary and you have a consequence. Now, in schools, predominantly, it has always been about, and traditionally, rules, always rules and regulations. But when you have rules, you can bet your bottom dollar kids are going to try and break those rules. I was one of those kids, It was the fun of it for a start, the sport, etc. So the biggest issue there is to make sure your language changed when you were talking about behaviour. And I did it always telling stories. I used to tell stories all the time on assembly to soften it, but to make sure they understood the message behind. So my very first day at a school called Oakey State High School, I had sat in the car park a couple of days before I took on my first job to watch what was going on and see which teachers weren't getting their kids into class and which were, and who the kids were that were messing around and what they were doing and where they were hiding. Everything was absolutely wonderful. Recon, going undercover. Anyway, I turned up.
You did a recce.
I did a recce. I knew I was doing. Anyway, I turned up on the first day and I said to all the staff, prior to coming in, I said, we have an assembly the first day and I'm running it my way, okay? And I want to meet all the school captains, the seniors, before we do it. So I had it all set up nicely, and I had the school captains swap uniforms. So the boys had to wear the girls' uniforms, the girls had to wear the boys' uniforms.
Huh.
We rehearsed a little drama scene, and I had this British Bulldog. And they had to bring her in at the end of, we had a little bit of a fashion parade while I was talking about my expectations for, following the rules. And then I addressed the behaviour issues with this Bulldog. So I asked one of the kids to bring the Bulldog in. And they did. And she walked in and the whole assembly went quiet and started laughing because she was a British Bulldog. She had that smashed up face. But before she came in, I said to the kids, I've been talking to them about behaviour, and I said, I've got this friend, a really dear friend, and she's really ugly. And, she gets bullied badly, really badly. You can see the kids go, oh, and I said, she's fat, and she's ugly and she really struggles. And I know if she was in this school, you would protect her and you would have her back and you would look after her. And they're all nodding. And I had parents, the whole hall was full of parents and everything. Who is this person listening? And I said, I'd like you to meet her so that she knows when she comes to this school with me, she feels safe. May I have your approval? And that's what I put out to the kids. And this is how you talk to them. Can I have your approval? Do you mind if I do that? Yes, yes, yes. And so I called out the school captain. He brought out this British Bulldog and she came out. Well, she was just loving it. She came out and she went right up to the edge of the stage and she sat down and she scanned the whole room. And we had absolute quiet. And I had to keep a straight face. And then I talked about this is my standard in this school, and this is how things are going to happen. This is the boundaries that I will and will not accept. So I didn't use the rules, and I said, I want you all to have each other's back, and I know you're great kids. I've heard you're great kids, blah, blah, blah. So I spoke to them about that. And at the end, she had a little singlet on, this Bulldog. And as she turned around, I thanked them and said, you can take, her away. Indy, her name was. And as Indy turned around, she sat down again. On the back of her singlet, it said, I'm not wearing any pants, underpants. And with that, the whole school erupted in laughter and off the dog went. So I brought that dog in every Friday, and the disabilities kids would come and get her, and they would shampoo her and run her around the oval while she caught their tennis balls to dry her off. And that started up their vocational program of dog washing. And we'd have that every Friday where the teachers would pay. They'd book their dogs in and pay. And eventually I bought them a proper dog washing machine. And that's how we started doing the life skills program for everybody. And that dog would go off in the oval. Not one kid ever hurt her. They lost a lot of tennis balls, but that's the story.
That's a great story. Tracy, there is one other topic that I wanted to bring up with you. And if you don't want to answer this or you need time to think about it and reflect, we can do it next time. We're going to get part 3. But there's something that Nikki and I reflect on a lot, because arguably Australia's most publicised case of predatory behaviour by a school teacher aimed at a student was Chris Dawson, who's now in jail. He's a former Sydney teacher and was a hero because he was a rugby league player, played for Newtown with his identical twin brother. He's currently serving a 24-year prison sentence for the 1982 murder of his wife, Lynette. That's a separate story. He's also being charged with carnal knowledge because, as it turns out, the young girl that was in his care at Cromer High School on the Northern Beaches was under the age of 16 when she was babysitting. She then moved into the family house and replaced Lynette when Lynette went missing. Now, the reason Nikki and I talk about this is because that was 1978 when Nikki and I were in year 11.
Yeah.
And Narrabeen High was the sister school of Cromer High. And in fact, when our school went Coed in 1976, that's when Cromer opened. The reason we talk about this is because that kind of predatory behaviour of male students towards females, that kind of predatory behaviour from predatory male teachers towards vulnerable female students went on at our school.
Yeah.
And it was like a club. And what Chris Dawson did with that young student, who we won't name, was going on at our school. Tracy, the reason we know about it is because the girls used to come to school on the Monday and brag about it. It was a medal. I am not joking. And there were 4 teachers in particular. I hope they're shitting themselves because one day it'll come out. 3 of them lived in this. There were 3 teachers. We're talking 1978, bronze skin, blonde, long hair surfers who were in their first year of teaching or their first or second year of teaching. And we're talking about girls who were in year 11 and year 12 that we know about. Year 11, our year, we knew of it. The girls bragged about it. And now you see it happening more and more, and female teachers preying on male students. And you've got someone who's in a position of trust, but a position of authority, having this power over someone who's vulnerable. And when you're a parent and you send your child to school, you want them to be educated and protected, not preyed upon. And so the reason I brought up Chris Dawson is because Nick and I often talk about these 4 teachers, 3 of them. Oh, do I tell you what subject? Am I going to identify them? Did you ever encounter that at any of your schools? And can you give me an example of what happened and how you addressed it?
I encountered a lot.
Was it males aiming at female students or a bit of both?
No, in my career, it was all males. It's tough stuff to talk about because I did a lot of it. And if you go back in the news, you'll find interviews I've done on it, especially in Sydney. With the pedophile behaviour, for me, I always made sure on the very first day of school, at pupil-free days, every single teacher in my school understood the rules and regulations when they came to the code of conduct with children. And the very first thing I would tell them is you will not have a relationship of any sort with these kids, and you will not have them on your email, your telephone. You won't give them lifts to anything, blah, blah, blah. And you can't by law until after school has started in the following year that they've left. Zero tolerance to zero communication. I think for me it was always a sixth sense because we had so much of it. So much in that particular community. I could pick them up a mile away, usually.
How could you pick it?
Oh, well, I'm very observant. I used to watch them like hawks. I watch everyone, not just teachers, students. Watch them for any peculiarities or any routines that they did that weren't correct, like, on yard duty going around the back of the hall or, places where they shouldn't be. There was some big tree bushes there that people were hiding in, and so I had them chopped down. I was at, when you speak to a child who's been
preyed upon.
No, yeah. When you speak to them and they trust you to tell you their story, and then you have to ring the detectives and you have to go through it again. After the first one, your attitude to these groomers is changed for life.
You become desensitized.
Absolutely. You have to be desensitized. You can't have emotion because you have to be able to listen to those kids when they come to you. And I was really fortunate because I would always say to my kids, I don't care what happens to you, please come and tell me. And I will do something about it.
Because if you have a predator, chances are he will say to his victim, you can't tell anybody about this because I could get sacked, I could go to jail, and by the way, no one will believe you. I'm a person of authority, you're a subordinate, and whose word are they going to believe? Usually there's that kind of
absolutely, always that threatened. But for me, luckily, I was ahead of the game with that because I would tell the kids on assembly, and they knew what I was talking about was real because a lot of them had been affected by it. And I said to them, if you're a friend of someone who's been hurt, you come and tell me, and I'll do something about it. But I said to all of them, you must know that the minute you tell me, I will do something about it. Do you know they all did? They all came and told me. It was horrendous, but I was so proud of them because it was such tough stuff. And of course, people were sent to jail because of it. They all lost their positions. It wasn't just teachers, it was parents. It was everybody. And it was, it was horrendous. But I was so proud of them because it was such tough stuff. And of course, people were sent to jail because of it. They all lost their positions. It wasn't just teachers, it was parents. step-parents, all sorts of people in the community. I even had 2 school chaplains that I had to exit off the school grounds for defying our code of conduct and knowingly defying it.
But it's funny, because that behaviour, those people are attracted to jobs where they are in a position of trust, surrounded by children. And I'm talking about priests, teachers, scout masters, swimming coaches, and often what they do is they befriend the families.
Oh, yes. Oh, most definitely. Their predatory behaviours is easy to track, actually, because they stick to the routines that work for them and that give them instant gratification. So for someone not knowing they're being watched, they're careless, actually. They can be quite careless. And so, and of course, I was really fortunate because those kids, as tough as they would come and tell me everything. I knew where all the drugs were, who was selling what drugs in the town. I was constantly on the phone to the detective inspector. He said, you're my best informant. And
but see, the kids trusted you, and part of the reason is they can sense your compassion.
Yeah.
You're a mother. Yeah. You're compassionate, but they knew you'd follow through.
Yeah. Yeah, they knew I would follow through and they wouldn't get hurt. So I had a lot of those. And to answer your question, it's prevalent, very prevalent. Now that social media is around, it's much easier for them to groom kids. So now you have to teach kids what it looks like when an adult is grooming you. And so when I worked with the task force Argos, they would ring me and they'd say, we're going to send you a piece of narrative. Can you please tell us if that's an adult or if you think that's a child? And I'd look at it and I'd ring back, yeah, that's an adult. And how would
you tell?
It's easy because when you're here in schools and you're hearing kids speak all the time, the way they speak, the pace they speak at, their punctuation, all sorts of things has a pattern. And then you go to, perps and they try and copy it, but they can't. They can't do it. And so I had a dreadful guy because in those small schools you couldn't deliver all the subjects you wanted to. So some of them I had to do online, like IT. So I would have a Brisbane school deliver to my kids online. We were able to very, very luckily stop a child from getting on a bus, a grade 10 child getting on a bus at the beck and call of this guy from Brisbane, and he'd paid for everything, a ticket. She had an intellectual disability, so we were able to stop her from getting on the bus. And when the task force Argos rang me, we went through the whole process of how they got to her, and they used the perp used her password. He was selling drugs outside the school gate of the Brisbane school, and he was giving away drugs in return for passwords. And that's how he got into the systems.
Tracy, for the parents and for anyone listening that needs help with this, what are the warning signs? Take us through it.
Yeah. Okay. So the very first warning sign is agitation. When kids are being groomed, they know something's wrong, it doesn't feel right, but then they feel special. So they get a bit agitated, they change their patterns of everything, the way they speak, the way they look. They might put makeup on, start putting makeup on. They become very secretive about things. And if you go into their bedroom, parents, you might find some things there that might make you aware. You should always have your systems, your IT systems under the parent lock so to minimize all that. And the communication is the biggest one. So I've done a booklet of this for parents. The biggest thing is to be able to sit down with your kids each day and say, what's a positive that happened for you today? What's a positive that happened for you? Not to you, but for you. I conquered this fear. And then what's negative? What's something that worried you? If we can start having those conversations early in the piece, once again, when they're in primary school, for parents, they have that communication then that's natural every day, even if it's in the car, they have it. And then the kids will they'll be able to see the patterns if they go quiet, if they start scratching themselves, clawing themselves, if they start hanging their head. You'll notice a change. You can bet your bottom dollar there's something going on, so you have to do your checks and whatnot. Kids, the friends usually know what's going on. in this particular, this isolated case I was just telling you about, no one knew about that child because he had threatened her with everything that he was going to kill her parents. So no one knew. And she's a journalist now. She's cool. She's a cool girl. With all that sort of thing, there's a whole range of things, but communication is the biggest one to make sure that you can talk to your kids, that you monitor their time on their computers. You monitor their time. You have a cut-off time and that's it. That's a cut-off time. I don't care what grade they're in. Once they're an adult and they're away from home, it's their job, it's, their life. But whilst they're under your care, you need to be vigilant, super vigilant. These people move fast and they don't mess around.
What do you say to an adolescent child who says to their parent, how dare you go into my room and look around and go into my diary or go into my laptop? I deserve my privacy. How dare you? What do you say to that? I bet you've heard that.
Oh, hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. And number one is, once again, it's the boundaries and the consequences in the family home of what happens in your bedrooms, what happens with your toys when you finish them, what happens with your computers. You have to start those rules and regulations, or those boundaries, as I like to use that word, early in the piece, because it pays off. Because my comments to my kids is, did you pay for this room? Did you pay for this house? Did you pay for the clothes on your back? No. So I give you the privacy when you get dressed and you have your shower and you go to the toilet, etc. But I am able to go into your bedroom. And I'll do that for a range of things. It could be to pick up clothes. It could be check PowerPoints are off, etc., etc., etc. And I will always tell my kids, and I will stand behind you while you're on a computer, and I will ask you in front of whoever's on the screen, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? And my kids would laugh. They say, oh, it's my mum, don't worry. Say, who's that? That's just my mum. And they'd go, hi, mum, and whoever it was. But at the end of the day, you have to set up those boundaries early, and the consequences of them. A kid demanding their privacy tells you probably there's something wrong, something happening that you need to be able to have a conversation about. It doesn't matter. It's about knowing that your kids are safe. And what will you do to ensure they're safe? And you have those conversations early, so as they grow up, they know what's safe and what isn't, and they know your expectations. Someone's asked you to send a photo of yourself doing a compromising position to somebody, etc. They know what's right and what's wrong, kids, and you teach them that at home, what's right and what's wrong. And as you know, the statistics are that inevitably it's always someone they know that grooms them. In the cases with the two school chappies I excluded from my school grounds, same, they groom those girls, and they were so cocky about it too.
How?
They basically, what right have you got, to intervene in this? And I said, well, when you were employed by me, I said, you have a responsibility on my school grounds. That's called the Code of Conduct. And I said, now I've inducted you in that personally. So you should have read it, and you knew, and you signed it. So therefore, you know the rules and you know the consequences here. And the parent has rung me up and said, you tried to take their daughter last night from her house, and you tried to put her in your car and drive her 1,200 kilometres away. What do you think about that? Well, you're not welcome on my school grounds. Don't you dare step foot back on the ground.
Should it be general government policy to make it illegal for any member of faculty, whether they be a teacher, a secretary, a cleaner, anyone who is employed by the school, to have an inappropriate relationship or any sexual conduct at all, whether it be by innuendo on a text, asking for an inappropriate photo, at all? It should be blanket government policy and not left up to individual schools to set their own individual standards. It is.
That is the policy of all public schools, that they can't, and people will do whatever they want. I used to say, I'd take it one step further. I'd say to my teachers, especially when grade 7 started coming to school, they're young, they're young, and they're used to hugging their teachers, and they'd want to hug me. I put my hands in the air every time. I said, no hugging. And then the teacher goes, that's a bit cruel. I said, no, it's not. It's not cruel at all. That's what you do. And you condition yourself to do it. No hugging. Please step back and talk to me so I can see your face. I remember talking to a lawyer about it. He said, but my daughters always hug their teachers. I said, fine for you, but it isn't happening in my school. That's for sure.
Which leads me to another issue. And that is, I don't know about Queensland, but in New South Wales, male teachers are leaving the profession hand over fist, particularly primary school, which is that important tier of education that we talked about. I've spoken to many male teachers who have said it's not the money, it's because of the microscopic scrutiny that male teachers in particular are under in the playground. And if a little girl falls over and scrapes her knee, I can't give her a cuddle and say it'll be okay, let's go to the nurse. It's hands up in the air and you've got to have a barrier and we feel as though we're guilty when we haven't even done anything. And that kind of social scrutiny, I don't want to put up with. We're going to put up with it in the workplace. I mean, in the workplace, you can't behave that way. Correct. But we are losing male teachers. Yeah. And I find it a shame, Tracy Tully, because so many kids now come from broken homes where there's no male role model. Correct. And male teachers are their only male role model, often. Yeah. So what do you put this down to, and how do we encourage more men to want to become educators?
Well, we help them for a start. So number one is, you're right, you're correct, their sheer fear of being set up by girls. So I've seen a lot of girls set male teachers up. Unfortunately, the police are...
Really? Have you?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. And
give me an example. A student setting up a male teacher?
Yeah. Emailing them to, to groom a teacher or, come to our place or, I've seen it all.
You sure that's not just infatuation and flirting?
Oh no! It probably, even if it is, it's
inappropriate.
It's inappropriate for a male teacher, any teacher, to.
But when it's the student approaching the teacher, first thing the teacher should come to you.
Absolutely.
And say, Susie's just sent me this.
Yeah.
How do you suggest I respond? And come up front with it. If you get a message from a student that you think, report it.
Exactly. And report it to me, and I deal with it. And so the teachers don't have to, because what happens is that depending on what they've responded with, I have to report it to the police, depending on how they've responded back, because they know the rules and regs, and they've all signed a contract at the beginning of the year. And so what happens then is the police do a forensic search of their phone. Every single message, everything on their phone is printed out. And now I say to the teachers, if you would like, you can provide me with a copy of that if you believe that you are innocent, and otherwise it stays with the police. But, I have to ring the department and I have to put you on notice because you've done A, B and C. But if you can give me the evidence and you can give me the situation, etc., then I will do everything I can to protect you if everything lines up. So it is about all that, and that goes from females and males now. Obviously, the females, there's a lot of females that are into it as well now. But way back when it certainly all began, I'd have kids coming and telling me, boys, that their uncles were raping them at home. Just horrible things that the kids. I'm not going to share a lot of it online because it's just not nice stuff. It's really horrible stuff. But people need to know that it's prevalent, absolutely prevalent out there. And for male teachers, it's a really hard gig now. It's a very, very difficult gig. And I feel for them. I really do feel for them. Male teacher will come and sit down with me and they'll say, I'm worried about this. This is what's happened, Tracy. This is what I've done. Can you please give me some advice? And I'd go, yep, A, B, C, D. I'll take that, thank you, and I'll deal with this. And then you'd ring the parent and you'd interview both the parent and the child, and you'd make sure everything was sorted. If I, for any reason at all, was alarmed, in any reason at all, then I would interview them there and then on the spot. I would take notes. I would notify the department. I'd notify the police straight away. Boom, boom, same time.
Well, Tracy Tully, we've covered some ground today.
Yeah, we have.
We have covered some ground today and all important stuff.
Yes.
The book is called Fearless. Hold it up.
Oh, where's my book? Here it is, old Fearless.
The catchphrase for today is hook up, book up to hook up, which I only discovered today. But is it on Audible Book?
No, not Audible. No, actually, I was just thinking of it yesterday that I should actually put it on. I should actually voice it. Put it.
You should do it.
I should record
do it. It's been a fascinating chat again, Tracy Tully. Thank you so much. You've given me way more time than we prepared.
Thank you.
But what we did was we went riffing, and I'm just pure. We had some things prepared, but I went sideways, or as my daughter would call it, I went bing bong. A fascinating chat, and thank you so much again.
Thank you.
God, imagine having me in your class. You wouldn't have. You would have gone berserk.
No, actually, I wouldn't have, because you probably would have loved communicating.
Well, I enjoy talking to interesting people like yourself, and it's been educating. You do it very, very well. You've given us something to think about, which is what the podcast's all about. Tracy Tully, thank you again so much.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Luke, and to your audience. Have a great day.